folks. Welcome to Simkin's Gaming Year in Review 2023. Uh, we are missing one of our panelists, but hopefully they might join later, or we might miss them. But I'm sitting here with RaeBae. Say hi.
Hi.
And Soapbox, Paul Klotz. How you doing, Soapbox?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. It's been a really long year. Hold on a second. I'm trying to turn off um my Steam here, but it's being so we don't get pop-ups all the time. Exit Steam. There we go. And there we go. There we go. All right. So 2023. It's been a really long year. And so, like usual, we're gonna just do a quick rundown of what happened this year, the big news events. I'm taking all my sources here from Wikipedia and their Year in Games Wikipedia page. Uh, so if you want to know where my sources are, and a lot of things happened this year. It was both a really good year for gaming, and it's been a really bad year for gaming, if you are working in the industry. And so I really wanted to take a look at some of these topics and discuss where the industry is going to be going on from here. So to quick recap, do you guys want to go through the entire recap, or do you want to talk about each story as we hit it?
I think we should probably hit things as we go through.
Yep,
Yeah,
sounds good.
sounds fair.
All right. So the first big thing of last year, I mean, technically I think it's 2 years old at this point, but Stadia closed January 18th and pretty much ended Google's foray into the gaming space. And um personally, I knew one person who bought a game on Stadia and they got their refund. They bought Cyberpunk via Stadia and they got the full refund for it, so they got to play the game. Um, and I don't know, was Stadia before its time? Could it have never worked? What did you guys think of an online streaming platform like Stadia? Paul?
I recall you went to the conference when
Right,
they
GDC
kind of first
2019.
started talking about it, and we talked about it afterwards. And I was pessimistic at the time,
Hmm.
but willing to give it a chance. Like I thought it's an interesting concept. I do think it's a bit ahead of its time. I think both on their end, Google's end, and also just relative connectivity for a lot of people. The people who would most benefit from a cloud based gaming solution are probably going to live in areas that have issues with connectivity. They're not necessarily going to have maximum speed broadband.
Hmm.
So, where was the market? Are we trying to appeal to PC gamers? Well, PC
Hmm.
gamers have machines that they're very proud of and they're going to use and they're going to keep upgrading. Are we appealing to console players? There's already kind of streaming on consoles to a certain degree.
Right, there's
And
PlayStation Now, and I mean,
mhm,
Game Pass. I mean, the idea of like paying a subscription service for games, I think, is a whole another concept, which Game
mhm,
Pass is going down the line. But I think Stadia was trying to be multiple things on its onset. It was trying to be like, hey, this is an online game console, so you don't need big hardware to play big
mhm,
games, right? So that was
yeah.
thing one. They also promised being able to just log a lot of different new tools for connectivity, and you start seeing this a little bit. And I know, Ray, you've been playing Baldur's Gate 3 online a little bit, where you have like the integration with Twitch where you can get your users playing the game with you, right?
Yep.
And participating. And that's really where I think Google effed up because like they have the online streaming platform with YouTube. They promised that with these Stadia games you're going to be able to play like NBA 2K, and like someone was going to be like to bring back the arcade culture where someone was going to be like, I'm watching you, I think I could take you on, I'm going to jump into the game with you through YouTube and play against you through YouTube.
Mm.
That was like one of the things they promised you could do with Stadia that never got delivered. And I think it's one of those sad stories. Like Stadia had some really interesting graphic options that I didn't see anyone use that they promised that was available. They had a lot of connectivity promises. Now we're starting to see a little bit more of that stuff with Discord and Twitch. But I don't know. Like, would you want to play games with your viewers, Ray?
I mean, to an extent, yes. I think it depends on what the game is, first of all. Like
Right.
games like Cult of the Lamb are like built for that.
Right.
Mhm.
Cult of the Lamb is made to be used in that way, and it's really fun as a viewer and as someone who is playing to kind of interact in that. So sorry, I still have a cough from being sick.
No problem.
But like for me with Baldur's Gate, I do leave it open. I don't particularly care in either direction if they use it or not. I enjoy single player games myself, so the multiplayer option type thing, even as it's your community, isn't as appealing to me,
Mm-hmm.
just personally. But I think I know plenty of people who do play games in that kind of way, and I think it is very enticing for that type of streamer. But
Right.
also, as someone who hates cloud gaming on
Right.
Xbox, not a fan of that whole idea.
Well, I mean, yeah, the I think it takes a particular type of game. When it comes to story-driven games, narratively-driven games like Baldur's Gate, I personally have been avoiding streamers who have been streaming that game because I want to play it myself, right? And
Mm.
so I don't want to get the spoilers, but I think there is a missing. We're missing the arcade culture. We're missing the hey, um, and I think games like Street Fighter Six have been doing really well with their Battle Hub kind of like virtual arcade center where you can walk up and play against individuals. But I think a ubiquitous one that had all types of games is something that could happen in the future if we had enough broadband capabilities and like a somewhat ubiquitous platform for that to work. Um, but it's also you have to treat your devs better. Stadia really failed because they really pissed off the devs who were working on it. I think
Mhm.
it was um, I forget who. I don't think it was a Stardew Valley. Paul, do you remember who the dev that made a public announcement that they will never work with Microsoft ever again because of the Stadia? Like he was developing a game for Stadia, and they were like, he got so angry of trying to work with Microsoft, and he made a public tweet about it. It's like, screw you, may your house burn down. We're never working ever again. It was something
I think
really
you,
public.
I think you mean Google, but
Oh, Google. Yeah, sorry.
uh,
It was
yeah,
Google. Sorry.
I don't recall who. I do remember that news story. I remember people talking about it.
Right.
I think the issue is deeper than that. I think this is an issue with Google's culture. Um,
Hmm.
they're kind of famous at this point for launching projects like this and then kind of half-arsing it. Like they just they don't give it the resources it needs. They don't give it people. Like I think you really have to bring somebody in who understands what the gaming community is looking for and
Right.
target those things. And this project clearly didn't do that. It was a really big example of like taking crap and throwing it against the wall and seeing what sticks, and then almost nothing stuck because everybody was pretty pessimistic about it. I mean, if Steve was here,
Right.
Steve famously last year when we did this, he was laughing about it because he's like, "Yeah, I've been calling it since the beginning."
Yep.
And in content creator, like I know a content creator, Bill for Run Jump Stop. He went in hard and was doing a Stadia Cast podcast for several years, and he had a following. People were passionate about it, but it was still such a small sliver, and it wasn't delivering. It wasn't giving the experience that Google promised from the get go. This is something that probably should have been in the tank for a lot longer. They probably should have been working on it in quiet for at least another 3 or 4 years. And then when it was almost perfectly done product and ready to hit the market, reveal it, launch it. But that's not how Google works. And it was clear that Google was looking to get revenue back to cover development. And it was too half-baked is really ultimately the problem. I do think there's some value in what you were talking about with like trying to engage in streamer culture and arcade culture and getting people to be able to interact with their communities live. But I don't think that you need something like Stadia to do that. I think Twitch is already integrating. Google will probably integrate like YouTube if they haven't already. So I think that stuff doesn't rely on a subscription service, cloud gaming platform to be done. And I think Cult of the Lamb is a great example. That's a game that was developed to be a game, but also a game that is community friendly.
Right.
And it's the perfect example of like something that is just fine by itself, but it really comes down to the game developers. The games have to be designed to integrate into the community more so than the platform. The platform has to provide the tools, and Discord, as you mentioned, is another company that is looking at doing that sort of thing.
Right.
A little aggressively. They keep reminding me that they have games that I can play with other people that I'm hanging out with. I'm like, guys, I'm already doing that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually probably use Discord's games more often if people are actually interested in it, but they're usually not. It's hard to get the whole community in on a thing or in on a platform. It kind of has to naturally occur. So speaking of which, and failures, the next big story I wanted to talk about on January 13th. We have, or at least it was around this time, the D&D Open Games license controversy, right? So late in December, Wizards of the Coast announced that they were going to revise their open gaming license, that they were concerned over people using NFTs, as if that's an actual big thing anymore, but it was back then, in creating content and them not getting their cut. And we can, might as well jump into the future. Now we have, Hasbro, even though, they have the golden goose with Wizards of the Coast is making them the most money. Hasbro, trying to be lean and mean, are doing what the rest of the IT community is doing and laying off lots and lots of their staff in order to run a tighter ship and make more profits. So, Ray, do you want to start us off? What do you think of the D&D open license? What do you think of Dungeons and Dragons?
I love D&D. Absolutely love it. Like, started playing like a decade or so ago with a friend who's been playing for way longer than I have. He's been DMing for like 30 years. Like, I love the game. I love the group I've played with. I hate them.
The corporate Hasbro,
Yeah, like, the company itself is, like, almost doesn't like their fan base.
No, they hate them.
Like. And it's really frustrating as a place that feels like a safe spot for being neurodivergent, being different than anybody else. Like, D&D was like that thing nerds did in their basement, and they
obviously, Stranger Things did Hasbro a world of good promoting Dungeons and Dragons to the world, but we as fans, I guess, did not buy enough tickets to the D&D movie, and and Hasbro had to cut the entire, they made most of their losses on their media division, and so they're basically closing shop on their whole movie studio, trying to make I heard someone trying to say oh, we should make D&D movies like Fast and Furious films, just make them cheap and keep on putting them out every year, and then we'll go see them. But I don't think, do you think that could have worked, Paul?
The sad truth is, Honor Among Thieves is actually a really good film.
Yeah, I liked it.
I mean, let me walk that back. It's a really good movie. It's not a film. it's a fun movie. It captures the essence of like what a D&D campaign is like, including the absurdity. Um, it was very referential, but in a loving way,
Hmm.
and everybody was great in it. I thought it was a perfectly fine, fully acceptable, fun little romp. It wasn't like
Much
something
better
that's
than the
going to get
previous two
people
movies.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, the film from a little over 20 years ago was absolutely abysmal. There's been a few others that were made that were there was like a direct to DVD one that was
Sci-fi, I
decent,
think
I
it
think.
was like.
Yeah, but yeah, the one with Thora Birch, I mean, it just terrible, forever ago. But yeah, it was a solid film. It's a shame that it didn't make back its box office, but I don't think that this is the kind of property that's going to get people to go sit in a theater. I think like it's really the tent poles or the auteur stuff that's going to get people into theaters these days,
Hmm.
and the D&D's not quite there. It is bigger than it's ever been, but the community is grassroots, and that's I'm gonna use that to segue back into the whole open gaming license issue. I was watching some content creators on YouTube after everything happened, and Questing Beast, I believe, is the one channel. He had a really great comment. He's like, D&D is the catch-all term that we colloquially use for fantasy role playing, tabletop role
Hmm.
playing. But the community is agnostic, system as agnostic. Like you can transition. As a matter of fact, there's a huge scene for old school. Um, there's lots of different books that are
Yeah.
published independently in old school. There are people are taking a crack at this all over the place. You've got Goodman Games and Kobold Press, and these are indie publishers that are putting out dozens of books a year. So if you're tired of Wizards of the Coast, there's options
Right.
galore. And I humble bundled it a couple of bundles. I bought them. There was one on drive through. I bought that. I was like, I will support because these companies were running scared when this OGL announcement came out because they were like, what's going to happen to us?
Right.
So I think you're going to see a big shift.
Oh,
And I think one
I
of the
mean, I
front
don't know if
runners
they were
on this,
running scared. They were more very, very angry, right?
well,
Because
they were scared though because they thought they were going to
yeah,
lose their ability to monetize all this content that
or
they
the
had.
the fact that it was going to retroactively take the
Mhm.
products that they have been, and they're going to have to pay
Right.
forward for any future sales, right?
Yeah,
And
I
that
think
was
the
the
first
big
emotion
scare.
is definitely anger, like you said, but also like they were potentially losing everything.
Um,
And some of these publishers have been around for 20 plus years.
right.
Because the OGL, for people who maybe don't know the whole history, the OGL was created for D&D Third Edition, and it was revolutionary at the time. It was like,
Right.
hey, we're going to provide an official framework.
It revived the entire genre, right,
Hmm.
at that time. But I think, speaking to your thing, it's again, these big corporations learning that the wall garden approach for media
Hmm.
content is not working, right? So
Right.
you like, and we're going to talk about it later when you take a look at HBO, right? Like they were pretty good, but in terms of offering HBO Max, and then they start, hey, they had a new CEO, they want to, they don't want to pay out royalties. They start cutting content that they have access to, right, and start
Hmm.
hurting the consumer. And when it comes to things like Dungeons and Dragons, there's obviously a hunger for Dungeons and Dragons content. I mean, I think Critical Role is still the top number one channel on Twitch, right? In terms
Hmm.
of the amount of revenue that channel brings in. So people want that content. They want to hear fantasy stories. So, but I don't
But
think people would be willing to pay, um, or like pay outside of Twitch. Like, oh, I'm gonna
mhm.
pay the Wizards of the Coast network, or I'm gonna buy the Warhammer Plus online account, right? And I'm just
Hey,
get
I have
there.
one.
But I mean, but Warhammer learned last year that hey, you can really piss off your community by trying to consolidate into this walled garden, where you say,
Hmm.
okay, you're either with us or you're not. You don't get to play, right? And I think what the OGL shows us is that if you open up your borders and allow collaboration with new people, they will make the content for you and they will help grow your brand. Um, But in the short
Well,
term, I think it looks better for the stockholders to say, "Oh yeah, we're going to have a new platform," and then they're going to scrap it a year later. You know.
the real issue here is that WotC's not getting their cut. There's so much stuff happening in the D&D space that has nothing to do with them. They're not in the monetization stream,
But they
and that's
are getting their cut, as in like it's literally the most profitable portion of Hasbro.
well, Magic the Gathering is.
Magic the Gathering, WotC,
They
yeah,
if you look at the earnings reports, Wizards of the Coast as a whole is very profitable,
yep,
but Dungeons and Dragons is under monetized, and they keep saying that. It's been year over year for the last like 3 or 4 years. They're like, our brand is strong, and it's stronger than it's ever been, and they point to stuff like Stranger Things. They point to things like Critical Role, but I think
right,
it's noteworthy with Critical Role. Critical Role developed their own system, and they're
mm-hmm.
moving away from using D&D.
Because mainly because of the OGL controversy.
But they were already doing that, though. I mean, the system was already in. They were already putting resources in developing it, and it was already planned to be released. I think it was released this year, if I recall correctly. So, I mean, that's not something you do in a couple of months. That's something that takes years to pull together.
Right.
And it's the thing that I always like to point back to is 10 to 15 years ago, Wizards of the Coast lost their lunch when they launched Fourth Edition, and Paizo, which is a company that spun off of previously publishing the Dungeon and Dragon magazines for Wizards of the Coast, um, they were able to create Pathfinder, which was basically
Mm-hmm.
D&D 3.75, and they suddenly were taking Wizards lunch left and right for several years, taking a huge portion of the market share. I don't have exact numbers. I mean, I don't think anybody really does, but I've seen estimates that they may have been neck and neck for a while. And that's insane. An independent publisher is taking half of the market share from the biggest name in tabletop RPGs. And they did it for that entire edition until fifth started coming out.
Right.
And they don't ever want to do that again. And that was all possible because of the OGL. Because of the OGL, Paizo took the core system of D&D, and then they spruced it up. They made some changes, they made some fixes, and then they developed all their own stuff off of that. And the OGL opened the door for Wizards to lose a huge amount of market share.
But in
So
time
it's
to
a
close it,
complicated
I
issue.
mean, you're actually making people even further rush out the door when you're trying to close it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Pathfinder probably made huge inroads in sales when this OGL announcement first came out,
Mm-hmm.
before
People
Wizards
flocked.
walked
Yep.
it back. And when it comes to Magic the Gathering, I mean, that again, what was the biggest seller for Magic the Gathering this year?
Lord
It
of
was
the
their
Rings.
Universes Beyond, right? So it was like,
Yes.
it's obviously like people want their different universes to collide. They want to play Lord of the Rings Magic the Gathering, Doctor Who Magic the Gathering.
Mm-hmm.
They want their cross contamination, as it were, of
Yeah.
like the purists. It's like, oh, this is going to ruin Magic. Well, why are you buying it then? So I
People
mean,
have been saying this is going to ruin Magic since 1994.
exactly. So I mean, but and then they take, with the layoffs, they apparently fired the person who's responsible for much of Universes Beyond.
Yeah.
And so like, that to me, that doesn't sound like a very sound business decision. But we should probably move on. Um, Next up on the list, in March we had the Game Developers Conference return to a physical format. I actually was there. However, I did not attend any major sessions. I was there as part of the New York State Development booth, trying to promote development of video games in upstate New York, uh, and the different colleges and the different game studios. Met some great developers, and my students got to walk around the space a little bit. So, for the most part, I saw a lot of emphasis on developing new AI powered creation tools, new 3D creation tools, essentially making the process of making games easier for developers is essentially what I took from last year. Um, Fast forwarding now, and I'm sorry, I keep on flashing green on my screen. Hopefully, the stream's going to be able to My camera's not going to break on me. Fast forwarding to this year, I think AI is going to probably be the big talking points of this year's GDC.
Mhm.
We're definitely there was one talk about how AI is going to change the one major conference talk, and I saw on the Vault talking about how the three different ways AI is going to change what it's like to make games. Um, Primarily being one, it's going to help organize your logistics in your organization, and we already use AI for that. We use Slack, we use Discord, we use AI to sort through what people discussed and organize that stuff's standard. I don't think anyone has a problem with that in terms of AI usage, right? Two, you're going to be organizing your assets via AI. That's fine, right? Everyone, if I don't know if you two have ever had to deal with a library of assets that was in the thousands and thousands of objects of like clip art or 3D models. Yeah, it can be a nightmare, and having AI being able to say, "Hey, I want something that's sharp," and having AI go, "Oh, here's a picture of a pitchfork. Yeah, is this what you're looking for?" And being AI having to do
Mhm.
that for you, fantastic. No one has a problem with that, right? The problem comes in with the generative AI, right? Where you're saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, AI, make something for me." And as a researcher, I've always been interested in one of my primary research questions that I've been thinking about for the past few years is how do you bridge the creative gap between knowledge experts who want to have games in their field for gamification purposes and the people who have the skills to make the game but not the specialized knowledge, right? So I work in
Mhm.
a university. One of the more common things that I always get asked by the nursing department, like, hey, can you help us make more learning apps for our nurses, right? How to make virtual cadavers or something of that nature, right? And one of the things is like, yeah, I would love to be able to do that, but we have to be willing to sit an artist down with someone who knows, like, let's say we want to make a model of the heart. You have to take someone who knows all the different parts of the heart and all the medical genre information that needs to be encased in that 3D piece of art to sit down with an artist for X number of hours in order to produce that piece of media, right?
Mhm.
um, what AI kind of promises is the ability to just spit that out, right? Like have knowledge experts say, AI, make me a heart that has these parameters.
Yeah.
That that's scary because
Mhm.
that's essentially saying we don't need the artist.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and now, like with the going back to the Wizards of the Coast and layoffs thing, a lot of people pointed out when Wizards of the Coast did their layoffs, they also had new job openings for people who would do cleaning up work, as to go and clean up art. And so there's a lot of speculation is like, oh, they want people to take AI art and make it usable for end user consumption, essentially.
Mhm.
And so, Ray, what do you think of this? Do you think this is going to happen in the art creation world? You make a lot of art streams. An
I
artist
mean, I'm
have,
literally sitting here drawing while I'm
yeah,
talking so that I can keep myself focused. Yeah, I've seen things about how companies, it's not just like in this industry, unfortunately, but companies that are firing artists and then hiring someone with the ability to like clean up AI art. So it's already something that's kind of starting to happen. I hate that it's kind of seeping in with any type of gaming, because like the creativity part is the best part, is like
right,
new stuff coming out that someone designs, and unfortunately I see this happening because it's cheaper and they can just whip out art without having someone sit there and take the time to do it. Whatever platform you're creating on, however you do it, if you do 3D models, if you make just like plain drawing art, if you're doing digital art, any of that stuff can now kind of be recreated, and it's kind of scary that that's what they're using it for. Plus, there's that whole using real people's art without telling them to teach
yep,
AI how to do it. So,
right. And this, we're going, maybe if we go to the plagiarism video that H Bomber Guy created, about how these essentially can be plagiarism machines, right? Like, oh, like an AI made it. Well, they plagiarized from this source, but you have no idea that they plagiarized from this source, right? Or they're stealing this particular person's style. Paul, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is a major concern. My partner's an artist. A lot of my friends are artists, and some of my friends are professional artists that earn a portion of their living off of their art. And we like to support artists. And I don't want to see the market become a bunch of AI generated garbage that has no soul, has no creativity. It's just grabbing, assets from images that exist on the net and merging them and changing them and then creating a final product that is very similar to a bunch of existing stuff, but it isn't strictly stealing,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote. That's just my personal take on it. But I think the one of the bigger issues is, we were just talking about Wizards of the Coast. They've had several instances of drama over the last couple of years with artists who are facing deadlines that kind of get them to start cutting corners. And there was one just a couple months ago with the Caverns of Ixalan set where one artist took another artist's classical piece and then used it as their backdrop and just put their art over the front of it and covered up like a figure walking down a flight of stairs at a ruin in Italy. It was a still life that they took, a landscape slash still life, and then they just put their art over the top of it. And they when they were called out about it, they're like, "Oh no, I was trying to set it all up, and I use colleagues' art sometimes for inspiration, and then I take their art out and I add my and it's like, dude, no, you took somebody else's art and you put you drew a figure with an object in their hand over the front of it, and then you sold that to Wizards of the Coast, and they published
Mm-hmm.
it, and now it's on millions of cards, it's on promotional materials, and that other artists happen to also be a Magic artist. They do art outside of fantasy and Magic and D&D and all that, but they also work for the same company. And a few years ago, we had with the Strixhaven set, we had fan art that was stolen and used in a official piece, and it was given away by the details about the hands of Nicole Bolas. And people are like, "Yeah, this the fan artist drew him wrong, and that's how you got caught. You told on yourself because it's not actually lore accurate, and now it's very glaringly obvious." I think
Mm-hmm.
that just speaks to the fact that the industry, in the demand to create content at a pace to keep people happy, they have a handful of artists on hand at any given time, but they expect so much out of them. They're demanding so many pieces a year. They're demanding them with such a short turnaround time. They want to iterate on it so many times because they need it to be perfect. And it's a lot of pressure. And now they're looking at this technology that might allow them to completely circumvent that or at least minimize it. Like instead of having, say, 20 to 30 artists on hand at any given time, a company like Wizards of the Coast could have 10
Right.
and then have a bunch of AI technicians cleaning stuff up and merging things, all that kind of stuff.
Which
So it's scary.
doesn't bode well for new students entering the like.
Not at all.
And right now, it's just there have been a lot of layoffs within the industry. Like Nintendo has laid off, um, Ubisoft has laid off, EA has laid off,
Mm.
Activision Blizzard has been laying off people. And a lot of people are saying like for a lot of these studios, it's kind of like a trend. So like, oh, that studio's laying off people.
Hmm.
If we want to be as as lean and make our stockholders happy, we also have to lay off people. And here we go. We got Steve joining us.
Off
Hopefully.
the top rope.
I made it home through the whole. I was locked in traffic on the interstate. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
Hi,
it's
buddy.
okay, Steve. Well, we actually didn't get too far. Over this, we've got like to our fourth point here on the news summary. So, what do you think of AI, Steve?
What
And
do I
do you
think
think
of
do you think AI is going to be the
AI?
next big discussion at the GDC this year, and how it affects the industry?
Damn. I mean, I think it's going to be an ongoing discussion forever at this point, basically.
Right.
Right? We can't put that genie back in the bottle. Um, I can
But
tell
is it really
you.
good? I mean, that's the other thing. Is the everyone's saying, "Oh, AI it's so powerful and it's going to change everything," but it's just a copying machine. It's just copying
It's
whatever. It's a, like as one person put it. I forget. Did anyone know where this came from? It's a blurry JPEG of the web.
no.
I have to find where the source of that is, but
Mm.
I read that and read it's like AI is just a blur. Like it's essentially taking its training data, blurring it up a bit, and then shoving it to you. So plagiarism machines or copying machines, is that what we're expecting from these things now?
Well,
Um,
and my personal experience with it is my in my job we have a report management system. We have a program that we use to write reports on incidents that we take care of. And this year, without consulting anyone, without asking anyone, the developer added Microsoft's Copilot AI into the narrative writing system.
mm,
And for those of y'all that don't know, I work for a police department, and it's probably a really bad idea to have AI write narratives for criminal investigations. Just saying.
Mhm.
So and if that's my experience in just that, who knows what people are putting just getting way ahead, not thinking about the the horrible things that could happen in not just video games but basically everything.
Mhm.
right.
In writing, allowing AI to plagiarize stuff, to and put information where it doesn't belong. You know what I mean?
That's another thing. Right now, actually, in my job, I'm a professor. We had this long discussion with different. I have one professor in my department who's very, very pro AI, and he's of the opinion that we should just pay for like give a chat GPT access to every student and allow every student to utilize it, and learn how to utilize it because that's what the future is of work, right? But all of us, I was like, well, then how, you're inviting the student to then not think or to accept whatever AI is giving them as
Mhm.
acceptable work, right? That's the thing. Like, I don't have a problem with someone using AI to help them start the process of learning in this particular field if they have no idea. But AI is very, very poor at giving correct answers
Mhm.
in a lot of fields. And so, um, and there's some uses of it in the generative sense that aren't bad. I had one student this year. I teach a first year student class where students are expected to create a video essay as one of their projects, right? So they have to do a video essay about their favorite movie that they watched this year, right? And the one student wasn't very comfortable doing her voiceover and used an AI voice to voice her essay. Is that
Mm.
acceptable use of AI?
I think in that case, there's software that has existed for years that will
Right.
just read text out. Um, I,
But this
I
sounded
think
like a movie star. Like it didn't sound like a robot
yeah,
voice. Like it's
yeah. Well,
gotten
I mean,
interesting how
that's a
good it
concerning
has
trend
grown.
because there's videos all over YouTube where, like I saw somebody had Kurt Cobain covering a song from like the last couple of years,
Right.
and it sounds legit. It sounds like his voice, and the guy's been dead for over 20 years. So that is alarming. To
So,
like
like,
what
what does
Steve
that
said.
mean for potential voice actors, right? Well, like, if I can get a movie style voice actor to do the voice of my video game
Yeah.
and voice all my, and I don't have to pay for someone to sit in a sound studio and record all the dialogue for my game, am I going to bother doing that anymore?
I mean, that's a whole other problem. There already been like a ton of celebrities who are mad that their voices have been used in things
Yeah.
that they
Right.
didn't okay. So
Mhm.
that's already an issue that's popping up, and I think it's just going to continue to get worse. A lot of them have come out and said, like, I didn't tell them they could put me in
Mhm.
this, or like it
Hmm.
was news to me that I was a voice in this movie. Like, it's already been occurring,
It's sad.
unfortunately.
The sad other side of the coin is this technology could provide invaluable access to like
Right.
grassroots creators. You were if you were talking about like people being able to start a project with
Right.
AI. So I see the other benefit. I see like somebody who wants to say get into writing or get into making a RPG book, for example. What's one of the biggest hurdles for somebody trying to self-publish or indie publish a RPG book? Is the art. You have to find art, and that's why like so many of those books have terrible, terrible art because they find the cheapest, bottom of the bin artists they can find, and that's no slight on those artists because I'm sure they're just trying to make their living, and they're like, I'm going to give you pennies so that I can put your art on the cover of my book, and then it's black and white all throughout the rest of it because they're trying to save on cost. And these tools could let a independent creator and a small team get a lot more leg out of the effort that they're putting forth. But again, plagiarism,
Yeah.
the true, artistry, true authenticity, and to what Steve was saying, the wider concern of like it's not just about gaming. It's far worse than that. I think of all the grannies and grandpas that get people on the phone and online, and it's terrifying to think that somebody can run several thousand instances of a chatbot that has learning based AI that is going to keep responding to them and be able to like grab information from the internet, scrape the internet of the person that they're interacting with in real time and scam them. And it's not even a person doing it anymore. It's now just software that's doing it en masse. That's terrifying.
Absolutely.
And then
So my
when they've got
guess
somebody on
is
the hook, somebody can slide in and close it out. It's crazy. It's really scary. So
my guess is that's going to be the one big theme throughout GDC this year. The other big theme is probably going to be on the licensing issues regarding this, and then just stores. We'll move on to some other news topics, and then we'll probably come back into the bigger themes for next year. But talking about stores and access to games, the next big story I wanted to talk about was Nintendo closing the 3DS and Wii U shops. Wii U shop is going to be closed in, I think, a month or so, right? Does anyone know? 3DS
Something
shop
like
is
that.
already closed. Or did the Wii U already get closed?
It might have already been closed. I
The
really
3DS
don't
is
think the
definitely
Wii U.
closed.
Yeah.
Um,
I actually think the 3DS shop closing was a bigger issue for more people than the.
well, there were a lot of exclusives that you literally cannot play now.
Yeah.
Well, and it's my understanding Nintendo said we will always support this platform. Am I wrong there?
I don't
literally
remember
came out
that.
and
They did.
They did not.
I'm
I
pretty
don't-
sure they did, and that's
Okay.
part of the issue is that it was just
Yeah.
like, okay, I guess they're lying about that now.
Right, just blatant lie, right?
So yeah, it's trying to get it through. Even trying to find a 2DS, a 3DS is kind of hard now, with the COVID epidemic making retro gaming so much more popular. Prices skyrocketed when I was trying to buy a 2DS for my daughter 2 years ago. But those games are really classic. Those games are really good, and we're losing access to that functionality. And this is kind of what I wanted to was talking about last year with Microsoft buying out Activision and having control of the Game Pass. I don't know how much I would trust Game Pass to be my primary access for games going in the future. I mean, I mean, Steam's again no better. If the Steam store, if Steam shut down in a month or something, like hundreds of gamers are going to lose thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of games. So I'd like.
I personally would lose 1,000 games.
Yeah,
I'd be
I
very
know.
upset.
Millions and millions of lives were lost and suddenly quashed.
1,000 games that I will never play.
But yeah, I mean, it's getting harder and harder to get physical editions of games. Personally, I want to get the physical edition of Baldur's Gate 3. And I was thinking about trying to like, oh, what store can I go and buy it? I don't think I can. I don't think I could go to a store and buy Baldur's Gate 3. I think I would have to order it from Amazon.
Alan Wake 2, complete digital release. You can't get a physical copy of that
You can't
game.
get a digital copy of that. I can apparently. I was not aware of that. You have. I was like, I went to the Best Buy. Best Buy is removing all their physical media. Like they've completely got rid of all. They're getting rid of all their movies. They're getting rid of all their CDs, and they've cut the gaming section now consists of one set of racks, and mostly just plushy toys and other like action figures and such. Like when Target and Walmart are your primary sources for buying physical media, I don't think that's going to last very long. And like um, you can't even go into like a GameStop anymore. Like GameStop's like retro offerings are usually really really slim pickings these days. So like,
Well, they're
what do you
not
guys?
actively buying this stuff anymore.
So how do you feel? What do you like? We saw Nintendo. You know, they're not going to always support their eShops. How do you guys feel about the future of like? Are we going to go all digital and you're just going to have to deal with it, or are people going to, you know, are third party vendors of old media going to keep media alive? Like, what's your thoughts on this, Steve? Why don't you go ahead and start us off?
I think this is going to be the next phase of the console versus PC war, and you're going to have to see consoles try to catch up to Steam. And what I mean by that is Steam, I as long as I have a PC and the service is running, we'll see how long that lasts. I can get a new machine. I can play it on there. I can upgrade. I can play them on there. I can get emulators to play the games that might not work with my old hardware, but I can get it running. I can get it running on a PC on any machine that has the minimum hardware for the game. I can't get a PlayStation 5 and play all my old PlayStation 4 games necessarily, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't have a PS5, so I don't know if what I just said is correct or not. But in general, that is the rule,
you
right?
can play.
Like, not everything's backward
I
compatible.
think you can play a lot of games on the from the PS4 on the PS5.
Sure.
But
And even what they did when PS5s are in short supply, they even made a lot of stuff forwards compatible. Hey, you bought God of War Ragnarok for PS4. Guess what? When you get that PS5, you can play it on there, and that's cool. That's really nice. But the Nintendo specifically is really going to have to catch up with their online offerings and make an online store that will work with all of their consoles.
the Nintendo online store was garbage. It's so bad.
Yeah.
It was the worst online store.
Also, the memory in a Switch.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah,
I have an extended memory card in mine because 90% of my game. I try to buy physical copies, but like you said, it's a huge pain in the ass to do it. So I have just like one of those extended memory cards in my Switch because everything takes up so much space.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking
And
of which,
half the
I did
physical
see
releases also have digital
new
downloads.
news. I did see someone say that they have developed a flash cart for the Switch, which if that would be big news next year if it actually becomes available. And I'm sure Nintendo will probably try to sue whoever makes it into oblivion, like they did for the R4. But hopefully, for those who are trying to archive media, that will be a way to do it. But go ahead, Paul. What were you saying?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just saying that right now, a lot of the physical releases for the Switch actually have digital downloads anyways. Like, you're just buying an empty case, essentially. Or, like, for example, like the Final Fantasy games, when they offer two of them. The first one's on the cart, but the second one is a download.
Right.
And because I've invested in a physical collection for the Switch for a lot of the reasons that we're talking about here. Particularly with Nintendo, because they have a tendency to just make things go away when they feel like it.
What is
you'll recall
Super Mario Galaxy 2? Did that game ever exist?
You may recall earlier this fall when we went to Retro Game Con and we went to Metal Jesus Rocks and John Riggs' Q&A panel. Yeah. I asked them what they thought Nintendo was going to do because the rumors are that we're going to get a new console announcement in the next 6 months or so. And this time, there's always rumors of that kind of thing, but the rumors seem a little bit more meritful at this point. But the elephant in the room is, so what are you guys going to do with your eShop? Are you going to create a new eShop for whatever new console comes out? Is it going to just be an upgraded Switch? So is the current eShop going to continue? Are all my licenses for all the games I've bought on the Switch going to roll forward? And I asked a couple of people who are content creators who don't necessarily have any inside knowledge, but are pretty experienced and get around. They talk to a lot of people in the industry, and they were kind of honest. They're like, well, I think they will do that and they should do that, but there's no certainty. And I think if Nintendo specifically does not roll the Switch generation eShop forward, they are going to get absolutely crushed by Microsoft the next time around, because Microsoft is honoring their whole catalog going forward at this point.
Microsoft has, and Microsoft's really being open. Like, they want the Game Pass on Nintendo consoles. They want the Game Pass on, like, they realize that the power is in who controls the content, and they want to dethrone Steam, right? Like, never mind the other. They want to take on, like, no, you don't buy your games anymore. Just pay us a couple of dollars, and you have the entire library of games at your disposal. And then once we control the entire market, we can then raise our prices and do that. But Ray, what do you think about this?
Like, overall, with moving forward, I mean, we have two Switches in my house. I started playing with old Nintendo games. If there were another option to play Nintendo games, I would do it. I'm not a huge fan of the consoles. I'm not a huge fan of how they go about doing things and, like, just wiping games and pretending they don't exist anymore. I really don't think they do a great job in even making a lot of their games. I know the most recent Pokemon game, I got, like, an hour in and had to, like, quit. It was so bad. And it was so expensive for a game that, like, didn't run. And it is only playable on one console. Like, I couldn't switch it and have it run better. It only played on a Switch.
Very interesting mechanics, but as a game, it was really, really bad in terms of engine option. But, like, they do that, and then they have Tears of the Kingdom, which runs on this old hardware, like, flawlessly. And build your own mech. I don't know what's going on. They need to have some more internal dialogue about how to optimize that hardware. The Switch can do some amazing things, but for the most part, it's as you said, like, the Pokemon games were awful in terms of their frame rate and pop-ins and so on
I'd
and
have
so
to
forth.
turn it off and then turn it back on to, like, the exact same spot to be able to keep going. I have one of literally every console. We also have, like, a Steam Deck in our house. We have two Xboxes. We have the PS5. Like, I've played on everything. I lean towards Xbox mostly because I'm lazy and want to sit on my couch, but I use my PC a lot more now because I stream. And I always lean more in that direction. Like, the Switch is great to take when I leave my house. I travel with it. That's really its, like, core purpose in my life, is it's a good travel system. But I don't know. I feel like Nintendo's falling behind more and more now, and their online, like, shop sucks. Buying stuff there is a huge pain in the ass. It doesn't work very well. Nothing they do seems to be very smooth at this point, and it feels like they are kind of falling behind with Microsoft and even PlayStation, who is not my favorite, seems to be doing better in some aspects.
See, I have the kind of reverse situation where I have I didn't bother getting the Series S or X Xbox. I have an Xbox One, and I literally have it sitting in a bag in this room because I was not using it. I use my PC, I use my Switch, I use my PS5, but I was not getting any use. And for Xbox stuff, that's like, my PC is my Xbox, right? Like, and the PC is, like, if you want to play Microsoft content, PC's where you should do it. And I think Microsoft realized that and is leaning into it, and they will probably benefit a lot more. They make so much money from Gaming Pass now, and with acquiring Activision Blizzard, that's only going to get even more so in the near future. Uh, Moving ahead, the next topic one, E3 is dead, and personally, I'm going to jump ahead. And the Game Awards 2023 was the biggest Game Awards ever. I think the Game Awards, uh, the Jim Quisition likes to refer to it as the game advertisement. It's essentially they have replaced E3 as the primary place for news announcements for the next year of
Mhm.
gaming. Um, did anyone here watch the Game Awards?
Yeah, I did.
You got Steve? No,
Missed it.
no.
No, I didn't.
It,
I
it-
heard bad things.
watch like it's the Game Awards itself pretty useless, much like the celebrity coverage of E3. You know, the people talking a lot of celebrity coverage, not enough coverage of developers talking about their games or time given to developers to talk to give thanks for receiving awards. Baldur's Gate was told to wrap it up,
Mhm.
even though they won Game of the Year. While they give Kojima 20 minutes to talk about a game that has no gameplay
Mhm.
as of yet.
Well,
So
it's a Kojima game. Of course, it doesn't have gameplay.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Basically a movie. So I guess E3 is dead, but it's living on in the Game Awards, and I think that's going to be the status quo in the future. I think E3 needed to die,
Yeah.
and I. But if you're looking for the substance from the Game Awards in the future, don't expect it. Is my feelings
Well,
on that.
okay. I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
jump in on this a little bit. I did watch the whole show. And
Yeah.
it was basically a bunch of game reveals. It was a bunch of trailers, um, interspersed with a few announcements. I'm going to be real, though. The gaming community doesn't give a hot crap to see a couple of devs come up that they don't know who they are, in most cases, come up and thank their spouse, thank their team, thank their publisher. They just don't care. And I know that's harsh, and it's no disrespect to the people creating games. I have tremendous respect for them, and I know that they're underappreciated to
Okay.
begin with. But the reality is, the audience that is showing up to watch that programming doesn't care about that.
No, they only
They don't
care
want
about
to
the
see these speeches.
advertisements. You're right.
Right. And that's the issue.
And
So Jeff Keighley is leaning into what his audience wants,
right. So why call it
and
the
what
awards?
right. Well, they are giving awards though, and people do want to
Okay.
see. They want to see the contest. They want to see the games listed. They want to see who wins, and then they want to have something to discuss at the water cooler or in Discord or whatever. The big upset this year being Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, it took down some behemoths like Tears of the Kingdom. Like, I mean, BG3 beats Tears of the Kingdom. That's crazy. It was awesome. Street Fighter 6. There were so many games that could have easily taken Game of the Year, but it went to the underdog that also is like the darling. But
Well, I mean,
yeah, I mean,
there's also the whole thing of um, Baldur's Gate 3 kind of upending how you can make a game, right? And we haven't really talked, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but this whole idea of that you have to crunch a game and you have to release within your schedule, and you have to be like Fortnite, where you have an online store and you have got people who have revolved their entire life, their lifestyle around your game and playing it every day with a battle pass. Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't have any of that. Was finally crafted by a large team of artists and is knocking the pants off of like for a lot of these big developers. They're saying you can't do what is what's the studio's name?
Larian.
Larian Studios. Larian
Yep.
Studios, like the way of making a game like that isn't possible anymore, is what a lot of the studios are saying. Like you just can't do that and expect to make your money back. And Larian said, "Well, we did it, and there it is, and people are buying the game." So it's kind of the exception that's proving that you can make games in this traditional style and make money. So
You can't do it that way if you are under a major publisher that's beholden to shareholders. Is the problem?
well,
You
I
can do
mean,
it if you're an
I'm
independent studio.
I'm sure who's making those decisions, really? Right? I mean, I guess what it comes down to, and I mean, Larian is not a small studio, right?
Right.
And then we get into the whole concept of what is an indie studio and what is a AAA studio, and the whole Dave the Diver situation. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Apple announced the Vision Pro June 5th. Is anyone willing to drop $3,000 for a headset made by Apple?
No, thank you.
That announcement came out right before I went to TwitchCon. And they were really pushing the new Meta headset there.
Right.
And we were like walking around talking about it because I have the Meta Quest or whatever. I have not the first one, the second one, I think. I barely use it now, but I used it before, and I was like, I thought it was expensive at $400. No, we're not going
$3,000
near like a $3,000 VR set. Also,
made by Apple. Made by Apple. Also, like,
yeah,
who has such an expansive gaming market and market share.
Yeah, it's crazy. My husband had one of the ones that had like the wall trackers, like the really nice ones when we first met. I think it was a Valve one.
Index.
And
or the
that
HTC.
that one was but that one was like $600, and that's a very nice piece of equipment. Like, no, we're not going anywhere near 3,000 VR made by Apple. What is that?
How many buttons does the headset have?
But does it have eye tracking? The eye tracking is the actual one feature that makes it kind of interesting from a researcher perspective, because you can actually, if you can track what the user's eyes are doing, that gives you a lot of feedback and data you can collect. But I don't know what the market is for that and what the content, who's going to be developing content for it, and how much they're going to have to charge for that content in order to make that viable. Because like we used the HoloLens on like Microsoft HoloLens, really piece of cool technology, really hard to develop for, and even if you like your install base is really small, so you really have to like find your niche for it, and it's never. I think Microsoft was smart when they made the HoloLens 2. They pretty much like, this is for engineers and like firefighters and soldiers out in the field, like very niche application use, not for the general public, and Apple, they're developing objects for the general. Does Apple generate for the general public, or do they generate products for rich people?
Well, they try to be a premier brand,
a
luxury brand,
But yeah.
They might not generate products for the rich people, but they price them for that.
Okay. Moving on. The next big F around and find out story of the year. This is the year of effing around and finding out. We have September 13th. Unity announced its new licensing fee and made all developers who use Unity collectively shit their pants. And they was about a week's worth of anger and protest, and then they backtracked it from their initial announcement of what they thought it should be. We had a number of different people, like the developer of Cult of the Lamb, saying that they were going to shut down the game because they didn't want, but then they backtracked and said they were joking about that. But I don't know if there was going to be retroactive fees for developers who use Unity in their development. This probably would have caused some massive headaches for developers, and
I'm not convinced that the retroactive clause would have held up in court. I think it would have gotten challenged, and
it definitely
more than likely gotten thrown out. But the bigger issue is Unity. Earlier I was talking about grassroots indie creators, and Unity has long been the engine that you could make your own game on, and you can make your first game on, and actually publish it and make money off of it. And it's pretty sad to see a pretty widely beloved engine like that was accessible and for just about anybody, for a hobbyist to a fledgling developer, kind of take the evil turn. You live long enough to see your heroes become villains, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it just speaks to the wider culture of like everybody wants to get their bag eventually, and a lot of times investors, whether it's a publicly traded company with shareholders or if it's just private investment, investors want to get cash back. They get to a point where they want to see big ducats, and that's what this was. This was a power play to try to get a lot of more money into the company's hands. But all that, in my opinion, all that did was say, okay, well, you can't trust us anymore.
Yeah.
So everybody's going to find a
Yeah.
different engine
And
to develop in.
go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, the damage was done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, actually, one of the fallouts from it that I feel that, um, Unreal, people used Unreal to make games, and Unreal themselves, are using Fortnite as their, cash cow to help develop their own platform to compete with Steam. But now Fortnite's becoming Second Life 2, where you don't have to play Fortnite in Fortnite. Now you can play Lego Fortnite. You can play all these different other game types, and now they're convincing developers like, hey, come build your game in Fortnite, which is basically the front of the Unreal Engine, and you can start your game development. So a lot of those indie developers are going to basically look like, I could build my game in Fortnite, make a name for myself, get a following, and then launch that into my career. Whereas, or I can start using Unity, but have unsure licensing fees in the future. 2 years ago, I gave I saw the story that People Make Games did about Roblox and how they were kind of creating this weird exploitative system for kids who were developing games under their platform. But it's kind of grown to the adult version now with Fortnite. People being able to develop in there. So I think the lost now, a lot of the developers who were developing in Unity have now switched to Godot, and Godot is open source, free to use, a great engine. I've known a lot of my students have had trouble using it in the past, and because it wasn't very stable. The newer versions of it seem more stable. We might see a lot more people using Godot in the future. My hope is, that happens, but I think there is a market for some innovation in this space, especially with, as we said earlier, AI. Someone needs to make the next big platform, because Unity has dropped the ball. Steve, do you have anything to say about this? You're muted, Steve.
Development platforms and stuff like that is a little bit out of my realm of knowledge, so I have very little to add into this, unfortunately.
All right, so moving ahead, October 13th, Microsoft finished its acquisition of Activision Blizzard, and as of yesterday, Bobby Kotick is no longer CEO of Activision Blizzard. The evil bastard is no longer the person who literally threatened to kill his employees if they pissed him off, is no longer running Activision Blizzard. So, good news there. But I don't. You guys were stoked about Activision Blizzard being part of Microsoft last year. Do you guys still feel that way? Steve,
I'll jump in. Yeah. I thought that the whole Sony lawsuit thing was very interesting. I kind of get where they were coming from, but I thought it was largely pretty fruitless. And I know there's genuine, valid concerns about consolidation within the marketplace. We don't want to see everything consolidated under one company per se, but in this case, it's just Microsoft acquiring one of the largest publisher slash developers.
And
It's not. It's a big
it's
deal,
a
but it's
big
not.
deal.
It's not like they're becoming a monopoly through this. It's just they're just acquiring a
They're
bunch
just
of content.
acquiring like 75% of the gaming space, though.
Oh, I don't think it's 75%. I
It's
mean, I
like
think
75.
the
It's
Call
like
of Duty market share is a lot of money, but and a lot of the actual Blizzard titles, like World of Warcraft and stuff like that, I think that's a fading market share that is much less of a concern. Obviously, the big thing was Call of Duty was the big concern.
no, I mean
Um,
not only Call of Duty, but you also have World of Warcraft. You have Diablo. You have all of the Blizzard numbers
well,
as
that's what
well.
I just said, though. I think the Blizzard market segment is fading. People just aren't getting as excited anymore. Like Diablo 4 came out, and people were excited for a month, and then they're like,
Well,
"Oh, it sucks."
I think Blizzard's been shooting themselves in the foot about that actually, and
Hmm.
Overwatch 2. I mean, I used to be a
Hmm.
big Overwatch fan, and now I
Hmm.
literally could not care less. Uh,
Hey, we've got to launch a sequel to this game so we can bring multiplayer co-op in.
and then
And oh, oops, we're not gonna do that now.
yeah, so
So
the main purpose of doing the sequel is no longer a
yeah,
thing. So I don't know, Steve. How do you feel about the Activision Blizzard merger? Do you have a Game
What?
Pass?
No, I don't, and I probably never will. Um, what I was excited about, as far as an ethical consumption guy, was to see how going forward, employee practices change, treatment of developers changes, and that's something we're not going to really learn about until the new games come out, new projects are completed, and people are able to talk outside of their NDAs
hmm
about development of games that come out in the future. So I'm still excited to see what changes happen there, but it's it's a few years out before we really start learning about changes in practices like that.
Ray?
the
Or,
hope, right, is that
sorry.
Microsoft will step in and clean house. They will get the house in order and get rid of the toxic culture.
I mean,
At
getting
least
rid of Bobby is probably step one of
that
that.
that was step one. I mean, he was the biggest roadblock in cleaning up Blizzard. Well, the whole
Or
organization, but
Activision,
really
yeah.
Blizzard in particular. Um,
But
so I think that the Microsoft team has a pretty positive approach to how they do things. They've been snapping up all these smaller developers and stuff over the years, but they've been treating them well. They've been giving them budget to finish their projects. They've been giving them leeway. You're not hearing all these horror stories of like, oh, Microsoft bought us and then they were cracking the whip and trying to get us to just produce. You're hearing the opposite. You're hearing, no, they gave us what we needed to be able to actually see this project through to completion. My hope is that they do the same thing with Activision Blizzard, where maybe we slow down on the Call of Duty churn. And I don't know about any of you guys, but I haven't played a Call of Duty in years because they're all the same and they're coming out so fast that why would I bother? Why would I play one for 6 months and then have the new one come out and everything that I was invested in just doesn't matter anymore?
I haven't played
Um,
them ever, but I heard
mm,
some horror stories that you literally had to play Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. You had to have the launcher for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and have that completely installed and then install 3 and launch it through that launcher. It was apparently
well,
a whole
a
like it
couple years
literally take
ago,
up massive amounts of hard drive space to just
yeah, a couple years ago, I wanted to check out Warzone, their battle royale.
right.
You had to install the full Call of Duty game. The total install on Steam was 200 gigs, and I
Yeah,
said no, thank you, because I have the hard drive space for that, but I'm not going to clear out like 10 games to make space for one game that I might not even like.
that just reminds me. I saw someone's the current install for Ark. You remember that game Ark?
Yeah.
Like it's like 350 gigs
Oh my
because
gosh.
they won't. The developers are really lazy and they refuse to delete their old code and their old assets. Uh,
Yeah.
Ray, what do you think about
I
this?
really have no feelings on Blizzard. I like Microsoft. I actually have a weird kind of I really like how they work on assistive technology in their games. I have a connection to the marketing manager at Able Gamers, and Able Gamers is who helped develop the Xbox controller that is accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And while that thing is very expensive, it works in a really cool way. And Microsoft is really great about making accessibility like pieces to their games. I personally have a really hard time with Tomb Raider because the camera shakes,
Mm-hmm.
and that makes me dizzy, and I can't play that game. There are now games where you can turn that off, and that is mostly in Microsoft-based games. So while I know nothing about Blizzard, I just hope Microsoft kind of expands what they are offering in their games.
We definitely have had a good year for accessibility in games. The accessibility options that are now in Street Fighter and in things. We also are seeing next year. Have you seen the PlayStation accessibility controller? What did you think of it?
I can look it up, but I don't think I've ever seen it. I'm like really not super into PlayStation,
right.
so let's see.
It definitely seems less. It seems more customizable, but more. It's a very much smaller than Xbox's offering, but obviously you can go out and get the Xboxes now, and I think.
Oh, this is weird looking.
Yeah, it's very weird looking. It's basically a giant joystick and a whole like. It looks like that. There's a board game where you have to like press down letters around a circle and it looks like that essentially.
Yeah, it's very weird looking.
But I think Xbox was leading the field in that, and I think and now other people are going the accessibility route, and as Paul said, if they clean up and allow the studios to heal, then that's going to be great. However, I am really worried about the future of having just accessibility or a marketplace for games that physical media is a part of, right? As because I'm starting to think about how do you then if a game gets released for Game Pass and it's only on Game Pass, how does one retain a copy of it? How does one access that in the future? That's the only thing that I'm really kind of worried about in terms of.
Has it actually happened yet, though?
I think that's probably the next step. Like that's
my understanding is that Game Pass has offered games that you could purchase separately.
Yes, you can. That's how it is for now. But once you,
I'm not sure that they want to close that loophole. I mean, I think that if they can sell you a $60 game, they want to.
I
but
think
if you're, if you want to rent the game, and they only make it available for a few months or something, I think that's really how Microsoft is going to approach it. I don't think they're going to take away the ability to get digital ownership. I think they're just going to cycle things through Game Pass that will entice you to at least check something out. What they might start doing is more aggressively cycling the offerings, because like they could take something like the next, Starfield just came out.
right.
Take something like that, offer it, like maybe not offer it for the first couple months, then offer it on Game Pass, but then pull it after like a month or two. So it's like, oh, if you got in and you were really enjoying it, well, now you have to go buy it. But they really, even despite that, they haven't been super aggressive about stuff like that. Usually stuff that leaves Game Pass, it's because it's a agreement with a independent publisher or developer that it ended,
Right.
and for whatever reason they didn't want to continue it.
This is the thing about digital stores, right? Like, and we talked earlier about the Nintendo store closing. The last big story I was going to talk about from this year was from December 11th, Epic Games versus Google, and Google lost. Like, did you guys hear about this court case?
Mm-mm.
So Epic Games sued Google the same way they were suing Apple, because if you want to buy Fortnite bucks on through the Play Store or through Apple Store, there's a 30% markup for Google Apple's portion, right? So the best way to buy Fortnite bucks is go directly and buy them directly from Epic. And they're like, hey, them charging us for things that we sell in our game is illegally monopoly, because if you want your game to exist on that platform, you have to abide by Google's rules. And Google lost their case. The court ruled that Google was found to be an illegal monopoly with the Play Store. So this has a large implications for all these different platform independent stores. You know, Steam, uh, Google, Apple, you know, them charging, you know, hey, you know, you want to be on our platform, give us our 30%. Um, that's possibly going to change in the future. Does that mean like they don't allow people who want we have less in-app purchases? Maybe that would be even better for the gaming industry as a whole. I don't know. Um,
I don't know all the details of the case. I would think the big workaround here would be like, okay, so for example, with Fortnite, if you want to get V-Bucks or whatever they're called nowadays, you might instead go log into the website for Fortnite
right. I mean, that's
and buy them on their storefront, and then it would just get updated on your account. And I know there are some games that work that way, but I think part of the issue is that like Google and Apple have said, well, no, you can't do that. Like you can't
yeah,
offer that kind of connectivity. And you see, like with Steam, for example, one of the games I play, Hunt Showdown, I can go buy stuff on Steam. Like I can buy the packs and stuff if I want, or I can go to their website and buy it. And either way, the license gets applied to my account, not to not to Steam or whatever. Like if I buy it on the
right.
website. And Steam, so basically Steam's like, yeah, we're going to offer it, and they take their 30% cut. We know that, but that's a choice. Warframe is the same thing. Warframe has you can buy stuff directly through their website, or you can buy packs through Steam, and they're both available and they're both valid. And there's been some issues in the past, but years and years ago, like a decade ago, where some stuff didn't work or whatever if you bought it through Steam, but not really an issue anymore. Um, so I think as long as these platforms are allowing stuff like that to happen, where you can go circumvent the store and still buy the currencies or whatever it may be, games or whatever it is, I think that'll be okay. And I think that's probably what this lawsuit is paving the way for, is making sure that that's possible. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there's no requirement for Apple or Google to allow your game to be on their platform.
True.
So I think that's how they'll respond. Is they'll be like, okay, yeah, sure, you're allowed to do that, but we're not going to support you anymore. So you're not going to be available on our platform if you're not willing to play
I
our
mean, that
game.
was the whole thing, like Fortnite being not being available on Apple platforms for a
Mm-hmm.
while because of the lawsuit that Epic had with Apple. But um, and of course, Epic offers a much better deal to developers when it comes to hosting your game. Like the I think it's like 10 to 15% for Epic's cut if it's sold through the Epic store versus 30% for Steam.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Well, they do that right now because they're the little guy
yeah,
trying to gain market
Mm-hmm.
share. Like I have no doubt that if the tables were turned and they managed to get Steam's market share, they would up their
Mm-hmm.
prices. I have
hmm
no doubt that they would.
It's also because they're able to do that because of the money they generate through Fortnite. I mean, that's
yeah,
the whole them buying games and getting exclusives and stuff over the last 5 years or so. It's because Fortnite blew up and they made billions off of
yeah.
Fortnite, and
Fortnite
that's
makes
how they
about
can afford.
$5 billion every 3 months.
Yeah, it's insane. So because of that, because of that, they're able to bankroll this whole platform and everything. Their platform sucks. Let's be real. We were talking about Nintendo's eShop sucking, but Epic Game Store sucks. It's nowhere near the functionality of Steam, and that's what people have been saying since the beginning. Is like it just doesn't have the functionality. Um, but that's really the difference with Steam is, of course, like Valve is taking 30% because Valve isn't really developing very much anymore. I mean, they have a couple of projects in the fire at any given time, but they're not putting out a game every year or several games every year like Epic is, or major updates to existing games. They have a handful of games on their platform but they make most of their money now through being a store, which is weird. I don't think they ever saw that trajectory when they first launched Steam, that they would become the de facto PC gaming marketplace, but they did, and that's where they get their revenue. So I think that's why the approaches are very different. They don't have something like, I don't know, Half-Life Battle Royale that would be generating $20 billion a year for them.
I mean, they
So
would
they
like
have to
to.
take that.
I mean,
Well, I don't think so, because
I
they're
think
not.
well, that's what they kind of wanted to do that with Dota, and they were going to like expand the Dota universe, right? And they were supporting esports for Dota, and they had Artifact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh man, Artifact was so bad.
yeah, exactly. Like it just their expansion in that realm didn't pan out, right?
Mm.
But and then they, we have the Steam box, the Steam box kind of flopped. The Steam controller, I have one over here. Like no one cares about the Steam controller, but the Steam Deck has been a really good seller. People really like the Steam Deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the next best portable device next to a Switch, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you got now that the Steam Deck is like making their way into the console market, I think you're going to see Steam going to become like Nintendo, like Sony, and like, hey, like we are we're a hardware developer. Get your game, like, but we're a little bit more open for development. You can like we accept all your games here on this platform, not just if something becomes an exclusive for Steam. I'm sure there are Steam exclusives out there, but it's just you don't really it doesn't really make the news as much as like a PlayStation exclusive does.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I think they're more exclusive just because they're on PC and that's where
Right.
people sell from. It's not like a selling point. It's just, oh, we're only on PC right now.
Right.
Well, that's the thing about Valve, right? They're not really engaging in any, kind of gross, icky tactics. They literally are just like, listen, our cut is 30%. That's it. That's our deal. And we'll support you. So, like we offer this platform. It has all of these features built in. We're always working on that stuff. When you need more keys, we'll generate them for you. So if you're good with that, come, we'll host you. Come on.
Well, I mean,
and they really don't get involved in like messing with stuff too much. Occasionally some of the mature content stuff, like they've decided to delist a few things. There's been a little bit of controversy over that, but I mean, that's their choice, but they're not engaging in like super predatory behavior. They just have a pretty steep cut.
There is the CSGO lottery keys issue, which People Make Games also did a story on, where they're talking about, Valve could close the API to third-party vendors, to third-party websites, so you can't. So all this item gambling for CSGO doesn't happen, but they're not doing that mostly because they don't have anyone dedicated to work on that problem. Because no one at Valve is dedicated to work on any particular problem. They get to work on the problems they want to work on, right?
Is the platform stable? All right, then do whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of people losing massive amounts of money on these gambling sites, and so that when you're saying there's no predatory thing, that's.
But is that Valve doing that, or is that just?
Well, it's something that Valve's benefiting from it because people are buying keys in order to open chests, and and it's their platform, right? That this gambling's occurring on. But the amount of responsibility Valve has for that, that's up to debate.
That gets into some murky waters.
Yeah,
for sure.
Anyway, so let's talk. I promised Ray we would talk about the Cozy Game Circle, so let's actually do that now. Ray, what do you want to talk about when it comes to cozy games and your Stardew Valleys, your Farmvilles? Because last year, I mean, we took a look at the Game Awards of last year and the previews for last year. Every game seemed to be trying to copy Stardew Valley. Every game had a glider and had farming and dungeon crawling, right? Those are all these indie games were trying to recreate the whole cozy game aesthetic. What has been happening in that field? I haven't been playing a lot of it a lot myself, although I don't like watching you play them. What do you think about the is cozy gaming going to be bigger next year? Has it kind of dropped off a bit? What do you want to talk about?
So so I guess I thought this was an interesting thing because last year did start to grow. It really started with, I know Stardew is like the OG that everybody thinks of, but it really started to explode with Animal Crossing.
Hmm.
And I think it kind of ties into the fact that like, hey, life sucks. We're gonna play a game where we can like own a house and take care of a farm and not worry about shit that's happening. I play almost all of them. Just gonna be super honest on that. I don't like pixelated games, so I don't play the ones that are pixel styled. That's just not personally my jam. Um, but it's almost oversaturated at this point, and they're turning out so many. There's like one every month, maybe even more than that, that it's almost impossible to keep up with them. And I honestly think we're heading towards a fall on that, and I think it's more interesting looking at it from the view of Kickstarter creating games now. So, like, people using Kickstarter to back their games, to make them. I have backed only one, but there are a couple that pop up for me that look kind of interesting. And having the ability to, like, crowdfund for your games means it's a lot easier to kind of create this content. And a lot of the Kickstarted games that I see, maybe it's because they're selling them to me, or maybe it's just because it's how it is, tend to be the cozy game vibes. Maybe because they're easier to make. Like, there's less story involved in a lot of the cozy games. There's less, like, world building. You're not going into it like a Baldur's Gate or even like a Diablo style game where there's, like, a lot of conflict and a lot of build up. It's very kind of stagnant in its own way, which is very calming, which is why they're fun for me.
Mhm.
I just, I'm wondering if we're gonna hit a wall of that type of game, a little bit like when types of books get super super popular and then
Oh
suddenly
yeah,
the whole market is all
and it
vampire
happens
books
in
or
video
all.
games often, right? Like we had the
Mhm.
you couldn't swing a cat without hitting a zombie game back in the
Yeah.
early aughts, right? Because of the
Mhm.
popularity of The Walking Dead. And, Animal Crossing, you're right, is, you know, everyone was doing that for the pandemic. Um, and I think you're starting to see indie developers seeing that as like, oh, this is the place where we can make money. We can develop a
Mhm.
game, we can get a core following, people are interested in this genre, and we can deliver on that style of game pretty easily. And which then brings us to like Dave the Diver, right? The Dave the Diver definitely looks like an indie game, but a lot of people were having issues with it as like, wow, this game is fantastic. It has, you go swimming and collect fish, and then you have a sushi restaurant to manage. And it's like Diner Dash, and oh, there's a farming game in it too, and there's an adventure game. Like, there's so many layers to Dave the Diver, and but it was developed by this pretty like what is it? Is it that it looks like an indie game that makes it an indie game, or is it like it has a pretty big team from a pretty big developer behind Dave the Diver? Um, Paul, what do you think about this? Because you play a lot of cozy games with your significant other. Um,
Yeah. Well, Nicole and I played one this year called Moonstone Island. That was a little bit Stardew, Pokemon, Slave Spire. So basically, it has the visual style of Stardew, and you can have a farm, and you can go collect resources in the world, and you have a glider to go to other islands and stuff. And also, you catch Pokemon and level them up and fight other Pokemon. They're called spirits, basically.
right.
And the way you fight is you use cards rather than like the Pokemon style, like you have moves. You build a deck of cards for each Pokemon. And I was like, kind of going through the same thing that you were just talking about with Dave the Diver, where I'm like, this is like 3 or 4 games all in one. But it was really well executed. We had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
And so I think like the thing is, I do wonder if there's going to be a little bit of an oversaturation issue at some point. But I don't know. I think it's all about finding what works for you. You know, like
Right.
I think there's a lot of
What's your
space in
first?
cozy games.
Like, I want a Legend of Zelda hackish Farmville plus um relationship manager. I don't know. Like, what is your
Well,
perfect
yeah.
game combination? Right? You know.
I mean, that's the thing is like Stardew is like the goat, right?
Right.
And there's a little bit of an adventure aspect, like simple combat. You can go into the dungeon and mine and stuff, and then you can fight monsters while you're in there. But it doesn't get super deep on that. The storyline is actually surprisingly intense and complicated, and like there's some very good storytelling. Um, Constantly added features over the years, and that game was entirely developed by a single dude.
Yeah.
A Superman developer that I don't understand how a single person could do it. Actually, let me walk that back a little bit. He did add a little bit of a team when he went for the multiplayer update because he needed help with stuff that he just wasn't good at. But he basically the core game up until a couple of years ago when they added multiplayer was completely designed by him, and all the work was done by him. And it's an incredible achievement. And the story, like I said, the story is there's a lot of story there. And like one of the villagers is like a veteran with PTSD,
Hmm.
and it's demonstrated in his now he doesn't just come out and say, oh, I have PTSD. He tells his story through the dialogue options over the weeks and months that you play in the game. And there's lots of other examples of that. There, each character has their own story arc and everything. And I think there's a lot of people who really vibe with that, and I think there's a lot of room in that space. One of the criticisms of New Horizons, Animal Crossing, was just that it wasn't deep in that way.
Right.
Um,
There was
if
no story build in that game.
right,
I love that game, but there's
yeah,
no story there.
I have like 600 hours in New Horizons because it
Do
came
you
out
want to
during the
get a new?
pandemic, and it's all we did.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably one of the things I didn't like about New Horizons is like, oh, do you want a new neighbor? Why? Like, are they going to actually
Hmm.
talk to me, or like, am I going to learn anything about them?
Well, there's
Like,
like 200 villagers, but like there'll be four or five of them that all share the same dialogue.
yeah.
you know
So,
and there's like X number of it's um and that's kind of an example of Nintendo sometimes going low effort. They go
mhm,
big on spectacle but low on like depth.
mhm.
And
But I mean,
I don't know, I think there's still room in that space. I think there's still plenty of demand. I think that's one of the growing sectors within the gaming market is as people who aren't what you would call a traditional gamer transition into the space, they're going to look for stuff like that. I mean, Animal Crossing, I think, brought in a lot of people who weren't traditional gamers.
right.
Um,
Honestly, it's super accessible. It's
mhm,
not. Wildflowers is one that I really like. It's very story driven. It's also completely voiced. Every single line and every
mhm,
character is spoken, which is beautiful. It's very well done. Excuse me. And the way they leveled it, instead of being easy, normal, or hard, is how long the day is. So, like, easy, the day is very long. Normal is just like what you would normally think of in those days where every minute or every hour is like a minute.
mhm,
And then short time, like, shortens your day to make it a lot harder to get things done. And that one was beautifully written and did pretty well, but it started as a phone game,
mhm,
and was like a mobile game, I believe, on Apple first, and then was like switched to other places as well. Is now on PC, and I have it on my Switch as well. I don't think it got switched over to Microsoft, but like there are some very beautiful, very well written, cozy games that even like the original Slime Rancher, which was
mhm,
2, 3 years ago, has like this absolutely gorgeous story of like adventure and partnership through letters with a partner while you ranch slimes that are
mhm,
absolutely adorable. Like mix them and use their like little crystals to make money. Like it's a super fun game. There's doesn't seem like there's a lot to it, but if you're reading everything that you find, the story's really really nice. And then processing grief is a weird thing that tends to show up in cozy games now, which I found to be like an interesting piece of them. A lot of them, if you're paying attention to the worlds, they're either post-apocalyptic,
mhm,
like My Time at Portia, My Time at Sandrock have those backgrounds. Cozy Grove is literally like processing grief with ghosts. And then Spiritfarer is its title, where you help spirits get over their issues and then bring them to the gates. Like a lot of processing of trauma, processing of pain, and like how we would go through just sort of settling into a soft life in a world that's very, very hard. Which I think is really cool, and I think a lot of people don't take it into consideration when they like think of cozy games. They're like, oh, they're just easy. You're just like farming. Like, but the stories are there. I've played Spiritfarer through twice. I play it on stream every once in a while, and that game makes me cry every time I play it. Absolutely gorgeous.
Well, I like to now.
Yep.
Is it? Do we need developer made stories embedded into these games, or do you want multiplayer in order to create narratives with friends, right? And to tie this back to the thing we were talking about earlier with like the lost possibility of Stadia, of being able to like watch someone and then participate in that game, right? And like Steve, do you play any of these games? Or
I still bring my Switch into the bedroom and fall asleep playing Stardew.
Okay.
Other than that, not a lot of them. No.
Now, have you ever
I
played
played
Stardew
Animal
multiplayer?
No.
And would you
No,
ever consider streaming a game like Stardew or anything like that?
I think I've streamed it sometimes, just like on one of my Sunday morning streams.
Right.
But not like regularly. But like hey, wake up and drink your coffee with me sort of thing. Sure.
But see, I think the next big step, personally, if I was a developer and I was like just trying to think where can I innovate in this space, do we have any cozy MMOs?
Palia.
Palia?
Palia is free to play. It has some integration. It also now does Twitch drops as well. It's like the only cozy game that does. It got pretty big in its beta and has now finally launched fully.
Interesting. But if they had some sort of Twitch integration, because I think, if I wanted to try to provide content, I can't make more content than my viewers can make content, right? And if you're going to give, being able to incorporate Twitch connectivity, have a narrative out there, for a short while there, I was watching a couple people on NoPixel play GTA 5. I've never played GTA 5 myself, but I know a lot of that digital world just from watching these people play and run their soap opera in this space, right? And the whole idea behind a cozy gaming, you're farming and stuff, but what if that, if you wanted drama in those games, I would see that being able to have a relationship in a virtual space, raise a farm, sell your goods to some sort of online economy, that would probably be really interesting. But I don't know if it's. But then again, does that go against the coziness? Once you add other people, does that make it hell on earth because other people are bad?
I mean, I feel like that feels like a direction The Sims should go in. The Sims is a core of, because it's been around since before crazy amounts of streaming were, and before cozy games exploded, it's a core tenet of the cozy streamer world. A lot of the big streamers that I watch are Sims builders or Sims players. There are shell challenges. There are those stupid 100 baby challenges that exist. All these things that you can do in The Sims. And it feels and I count The Sims as kind of a cozy game because you're just designing and running a life. It feels cozy. If EA were smart, which we all know they're not, that would be the direction they would take The Sims, because I think that would be a really interesting way to play that particular type of game.
I don't know if it was watching Spy Family this year and being really enjoying it, but I had a fever dream one night where I was thinking, what if you took The Sims and combined it with a espionage game? So you had to go do spy work and then come home to your family and manage your family life as well as the Sims meets Espionage Inc. Like it was just like that's the next game I'm working on.
Well, so that's a little bit like Moonlighter, one of my favorite roguelikes, where you run a shop, like a medieval
Right.
item shop, and then you have to go into the dungeon at night to get all the stuff to sell in your shop, which is cool.
And
Like
like
it's a really
Reciteer,
cool,
right?
yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I think I think what we'll see as the cozy genre expands is you'll see kind of like what I was talking about with Moonstone Island. It's basically three different games in one, at least popular games. It's a little Stardew, it's a little Pokemon, and it's a little Slay the Spire. I think you're going to see more of that. You're going to see the genre grab what works in other subgenres and be like, all right, so let's integrate that. And like what you just said is a good idea. That could be, and there's a little bit of that in The Sims actually. Like there's some Nicole plays, I don't play, but she tells me about stuff, and like so you can have a storyline with your sim and like a career, and like weird things will happen, and like she tells me all the crazy stuff that can happen, and they put some really interesting stuff in there, so you can actually have some pretty surprising stuff happen that is beyond just building a house and then managing the family and
It's
everything.
also very mod friendly. I have a ton of
Right.
mods in my Sims
Yeah,
game.
yeah. Oh man, yeah. Infuriating though because EA mismanages it so badly. Um, Part of the reason why I don't really enjoy playing the game is because I've tried, is because things don't work the way that you think that they should, and building is infuriating, and the colors on things never match up properly because they never bother to cross like reference things even within the same sets and stuff. It's just really infuriating for me. But
There's
yeah,
a new game, a Korean game coming out that might wipe out The Sims.
ooh,
That's the new thing in that community.
there
What
you
game is
go.
this?
It's called Izui, I believe. When it had like its first trailer launch, if it's as good as it looks, The Sims is dead.
All right. Let's start wrapping things up. I think I made a list of the big hits of the year. We have the beginning of the year. We had Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. I dedicated a few months, at least a month of my life to that game and trying to finish it up as fast as I could, so I can then get back to work. We had Baldur's Gate 3. In games, we had Street Fighter 6. Nintendo had Super Mario Wonder that just came out. I played through it with my daughter. Fun Mario game, or as some people call it, Super Mario Brothers on drugs. We also had in the indie scene, we had Sea of Stars get released, and I've been playing that, a good old school RPG in the Super NES era style. For the PlayStation, they had Ragnarok and Spider-Man 2. Am I missing any big games this year?
If you're in the cozy community, Fae Farm was huge.
Fae Farm?
Mm.
Okay. But I was just thinking, so it doesn't have to be from this list, or go ahead.
Alan Wake 2.
Okay.
I haven't played it, but they really jumped out to me during the Video Game Awards that this was a game that kind of like it was a beloved franchise. It was a bit of a cult classic, and
Subverts
absolutely insane
expectations.
amount of support
That
for the second game. I think that was kind of a surprise like hit that came out of kind of nowhere because it was a little bit of a niche game that suddenly just blew up this year.
yeah,
So
the tie-ins with Max Payne as Remedy's earlier game, and also rest in peace for the developer who was the inspiration for Max Payne. But apparently they couldn't reference Max Payne in the game, but they did anyway. It's very obviously they're talking about Max Payne
mm.
in that game. But let's go ahead and just talk. What's your game of the year? What game have you spent the most time on? What do you want to talk about for a few minutes? So, Steve, I'll start with you. What is your game of the year, and what do you have to say about it?
Well, it came out in January. I just bought it and played it this month. But my game of the year, as a horror game aficionado, is the Dead Space remake.
Mm.
It I've played a few remakes of games, and remakes of games are less, I guess, um, in the popular zeitgeist than remakes of movies are. But I have never played a remake of a game that so obviously respects its source material, its predecessor, so much, and takes it and says, we want to make the definitive version of the original. It
Yeah.
didn't change a whole lot of the core mechanics. It says, we think, like, you can tell the developers are like, we think the original is a fantastic game,
Mm-hmm.
and we just want to make it better. That's it.
Yeah, I've heard
We don't.
nothing but good things about the Dead Space remake.
I loved it.
It looks really good. It's giving hope to maybe they'll remake the second game. Um, I haven't heard like people were really disappointed about the third game in the series. Also, I heard a lot of disappointment over the Callisto Protocol. Did you play that at all?
I didn't. I heard the same disappointments, but not just from a gameplay and story standpoint, but from a pure functionality standpoint. Apparently, that game shipped broken.
Yeah. Okay, but in the horror genre, you think the Dead Space remake was better than Resident Evil 4
Haven't
remake?
played it yet. Just bought it.
Oh,
I'll let you know next year.
okay. uh, all right. Those are the two big heavyweights when it comes down to the horror genre, as I feel. But
This year for sure, I'd say.
Soapbox, what's your game of the year, and what have you been playing? What do you have to say about it?
So my game of the year is not a game I've played yet, but it has to be Baldur's Gate 3. Um, I grew up playing Baldur's Gate 2, Icewind Dale. I grew up on the Obsidian CRPGs. They're some of my favorite games of all time, and I think while Larian has a slightly different approach to the classics, I think they've gone in the right direction. And even though I haven't bought and played the game yet, I've seen enough to know that it's going to be a good experience. Um, People are gushing about it. There's something for everybody in it. It has massive replayability. It has the multiplayer functionality. I don't think you could have done a better job at revitalizing the CRPG genre, and I also think it's going to be a really, really hard act to follow. Um, I don't know that it would be easy for anybody else to hit on that level. So yeah, it has to be game of the year for me because we may never see another title like that. I'd like to think that Larian will go on to make more in that vein, but who knows how the universe will align itself and allow that to happen or not? Because it was a monumental task. I mean, they built the two Divinity Original Sin games. They were very popular. They broke ground in the genre that allowed them to finally negotiate for the licensing to do Baldur's Gate, and they crushed it. They absolutely killed. So um, I'm really happy for them. I'm glad they managed to pull it off, and I just think whatever they do next is also going to be gangbusters. As for what I've played this year, I was just looking through my Steam library a little bit. I played a bunch of Fallout 76 earlier in the year. Um, Not as bad as people said it was. They keep producing content for it. I did not play Starfield. I heard that was very bad, so that might be my loser of the year. But I want to give some props to two ongoing games that I continue to play. MechWarrior 5, still putting out expansions and new content, and a lot of mod support as well. And also Hunt Showdown. It's a horror shooter. I mentioned it last year when we talked, and literally hundreds of hours I've been playing with some friends again this year. I actually didn't play it much last year. I took about a year off, and they're doing new things with their story events that are coming out. They last about 2 months. Um, they're just continuing to innovate on their game, and it's getting better and better for the most part. It is changing a bit. Not everybody's down with that, but yeah. So I think the sweet spot in the industry right now is really with, I don't know if we would call them all indie developers, but smaller developers, smaller teams that are artfully making the most of the resources they have available and operating within certain confines, but still producing incredible experiences. That's what I'm really seeing. And all three of those games I just mentioned, Baldur's Gate. I mean, Larian's a big studio, but they're not a AAA studio quite yet. Though I think they might be on the verge of that. They'll either get
I
acquired
don't
by
know whether
somebody or they'll
the
scale up.
definitions there. I don't think there
Yeah.
is a definition. Um, Ray, what is your game of the year?
I gotta say, Baldur's Gate. I have not finished it, but I've gotten to Act 3 on 2 playthroughs, but I have like 7 of them, so it's definitely replayable. It's so at the beginning of when I first started streaming, I talked a lot about how I kind of wanted to get back that like magic of gaming when you first play a game and you fall in love with it and it's amazing and you're like learning new things. And for me, the original game like franchise that caused that feeling was Dragon Age. So I bought Baldur's Gate knowing it was turn-based combat, which is not my favorite style in a game. But it heard good things, and then now I'm like, Dragon Age is supposed to be coming out with a new game in the next year or two that they've been pushing back and pushing back every single year. Now I'm a little sad because there's no way it's gonna be anywhere near as good as Baldur's Gate was. Like the characterization is amazing. The fact that you can replay it and see things you've never seen before, like it's so well done. And then the other one on the cozy side of like what I tend to lean towards was Fae Farm because it brought back that like magic that Animal Crossing gave off when I first started playing in that vein. So it's a very cute game. The NPCs are terrible. If you ever do play it, just know they suck. They did a terrible job there. But the actual game itself is very cute. It's very cozy. It's very fun to play. And it builds really well. It doesn't like slam on the brakes anywhere for random, no apparent reason. So those are my two.
All right. And if I was going to get two, I guess for this year's the new game of the year that I've been playing, probably put the most time in, would probably have to be Street Fighter 6. I'm not a great fighting game player. I'm not going to win any tournaments, but Street Fighter 6. Every time my one friend comes over to the house, we're playing it every week, challenging each other to get better. If you've never played it before, the modern controls have revitalized and introduced a whole new generation of the game of people to Street Fighter, which is a very big wall, like design wise. How do you introduce new people to this system, which is so deep and archaic with like 6 buttons and all you have to do move the joystick in specific ways to do super moves and then combos. I personally I grew up with Street Fighter from the arcades in New York City, and I love that genre so much, and to have Capcom continue to support it and make such a quality game out of it, I was just so happy. It's going to keep the genre going for a while. Little disappointed with the monetization that Capcom's falling into, and the cost of buying costumes and such. But that's kind of the entire genre as it is right now. You kind of release a core group of fighters, and you just keep on releasing more and more characters and costumes to try to fund the development of that game. When it comes down to the game I've been probably playing the most, last year I think I mentioned honorable mention to Deep Rock. I've been continuing to play Deep Rock. Deep Rock is fun, but I have to, in terms of the old game that I probably played most this year, was Risk of Rain 2. My group of friends have reignited their passion for the game, and so every so many days it's like, you want to do a Risk of Rain 2 run? Yep. It's like, okay, we don't have anything else to unlock, it doesn't matter, let's just goof off and put on some artifacts and play the game. So much so that I went ahead and bought I had some concerns when development of the game got handed off to Gearbox from Hopo Games, and so but Gearbox has announced that they're going to be making more content for it, and the work that Gearbox has done so far has been great, and I'm really looking forward to the new content they're planning for the title in the future. Also, the Risk of Rain Returns remake of the original game. I finally finished my first run of it, and with my favorite character, the Loader. It I can see, and it's nice seeing like the inspiration for Risk of Rain 2 since I never played the original, and it's been really great. So I guess that counts as a new release game that I've been really enjoying. All right, thank you guys for joining me. We hit 2 hours, 15 more minutes than we did last year. But hopefully, Ray, thank you for joining us this year. Did you have fun?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I hope to. I've been trying to do some more art streaming. I haven't streamed since like the end of the semester was horrid, but in the upcoming few months, I would like to be able to do more content like this. I would like to be able to stream playing some more retro style stuff. I've been getting into trying to get my old stuff working. I bought an upscaler so I can play my PS2 again. I got maybe for Halloween this year. I have Eternal Darkness that I want to get set up on the Wii and maybe stream a bit of that. But since we're getting to the end, I wanted to give you guys a chance to promote your own channels and talk about what's new on your neck of the woods. So, Steve, why don't you go ahead and tell us where we can find you and what you're working on?
I stream very few and far between these days, but you can still find me on YouTube and TikTok at HeWhoisSteve, or TikTok where I mostly rate the butts of Civil War statues, and on YouTube where I make all kinds of content from videos on God of War to my next project, which was going to come out this month, but it looks like it's going to be an early 2024 release, entitled "How to Stay a Virgin in America, Maintaining Your Purity in the Greatest Country in the World," which may or may not be satire.
All right, then. Paul, are you going to be making any more content, or are you retired?
I am a content creator on hiatus at the moment. Unfortunately, my living situation at the moment makes it so it's hard I can't stream on my internet connection and stuff. So stay tuned. Might do some talking head stuff in the coming year like this, like roundtable type stuff, but definitely no game streaming or anything like that. And our Nicole and my podcast, you can still listen to old episodes, but we are on hiatus for the indefinite future at the moment. Speaking of which, we shut down our Patreon. Thank you for the support of Steve and our other patron for many moons. Appreciate it. But we didn't put out, I think we put out one episode last year, so I was like, it's time to put a pause. So yeah, we might bring the podcast back in the future, but there's back episodes you can listen to. Crash Test Pilots, if you want to listen to Nicole and I watch the first episode of television shows and discuss them. Steve was on a couple episodes, and those were a good time. And there's some other great ones with some other great guests. And yeah, but yeah, if my situation changes, I may make a triumphant return. But yeah.
And Ray, where can we find you?
On Twitch, RaeBae17 is the name there. I do a lot of cozy games. I also stream Baldur's Gate sometimes. Actually, went out and got a new graphics card because my graphics card couldn't handle it. And try to do art streams, but that is scary to draw and paint in front of other people, so I don't do it as much as I tend to play Fae Farm, Animal Crossing, Coral Island, that kind of stuff. But Mondays, sometimes Tuesdays, and Thursdays. So.
All right. And I don't stream regularly. If I only do when the mood takes me. I'm not going to make the promise I did last year of trying to stream on the weekends. It just didn't happen. I have got you can see the pile of Gunpla that I need to get to, building up behind me. But I have started painting again. I got a new uh, spray spraying booth, so I can maybe do some airbrushing. So I'm hoping to possibly do some more painting streams and some gaming streams in the future. If it happens, it will most likely happen either Fridays or Saturdays. Um, and if you missed any of this, I will be posting this on my YouTube channel, Simkin PhD vids, and you can watch the VOD here if Twitch allows that for the month that keeps it up. Thank you guys so much, and maybe talk again next year. All right. Good night, everyone.